her back against corners all afternoon, like a bear on a tree. It had become the sole focus of her every thought. Have you ever had something in a sock or your waistband that was relentless in its torture? Because that's what this was. At lunch, it had been a nuisance. By the afternoon, she was convinced it was trying to kill her. So when she'd entered the upstairs lounge where she was to meet the 8th grader and it was empty, she dropped her bag, took off her coat, and tugged the sweater over her head. But she'd been so hasty in her desire to remove the offending garment, she'd made the mistake of pulling the sweater over her head with both arms instead of one arm at a time. It caught under her armpits and stopped moving. Thus, she was standing somewhere in the lounge with her arms stretched above her and the sweater bunched around her head. She couldn't see, she couldn't breathe, and she couldn't move. "Help," she whispered to no one. Again, the panic threatened to take over. She wasn't an overly anxious person. She liked to think of herself as fairly zen. But whatever piece of plastic or thread or glue that had tormented her all day long had driven away her sensibleness, and she was now gulping for air, trapped in a jumper, a prison of her own making. New fear unlocked. Small, confined spaces. Nope, she would not die here, not like this and not today. The studio wasn't devoid of human life. She'd passed at least 2 sound engineers on her way to the lounge. Sure, she didn't know their names, but she could ask them to help her. Maybe Nikki was working. Nikki seemed nice those 2 times they had almost interacted. Maybe she would rescue her. She took a tentative step in the direction she hoped was the door. Another step. Okay, so far, so good. Another step and her hip bumped into the edge of the table. Or was it the counter in the kitchenette? She tried to rub her hip and butt along the edge to orient herself. The sound of a door opening spun her around, and she almost lost her balance. "Hello?" she called, hearing the tremor in her voice.
"Hello?"
A male voice replied, and there was no mistaking the amusement in his tone. She exhaled loudly and tried to walk toward his voice, but collided with the table again.
"You are all turned around,"
he said, coming closer.
"Just wait."
"Please help me," she said. "I'm stuck, and I can't." She wiggled her arms above her head uselessly. Her fingertips tingled. That couldn't be good.
"What can I do to help?"
he asked, now standing in front of her. She hinged forward at the hips. "Can you pull the sweater off?" Silence for a beat, and then a deep breath. He smelled like coffee and fresh air. She wondered which engineer this was. His voice didn't sound like Johnny, the owner of the studio, and it definitely wasn't Johnny's younger brother, Sean, because he would have just started laughing and wouldn't have stopped.
"Okay, I'm going to have to touch you. Is that okay?"
"Yeah," she replied, slightly confused by his statement, because it was pretty obvious that if she'd asked him to help her, he was going to have to touch her. But when cool fingers brushed against the exposed skin near her armpits, she flinched. Oh, now that made sense. He tugged on the fabric around her armpits, and it didn't budge. He said to himself, and she sensed him step back.
"It's really stuck."
She bopped her upper body in agreement, because, duh. He stepped closer and tried again in a slightly different place. Nothing changed.
"I don't want to ruin your sweater,"
he said, sounding distressed. "And I don't want to die dressed like a traffic cone," she replied, a little more hotly than she should have. He chuckled and tugged at the sleeves over her head. "Sorry," she mumbled.
"You do not have to apologize."
His voice moved like he was walking a circle around her.
"Though I don't think you look like a traffic cone. I actually saw you as one of those inflatable tube man things you see outside car dealerships."
She laughed despite herself. "That's not better."
"You think if I pull straight up, we'll end up with a finger trap situation? Because that's what I'm afraid of."
"I am very willing to risk it."
"Okay."
He fiddled with the top of the sweater.
"Stop me if it hurts."
She braced. The fabric tugged, pulled, and